She was born Ruth Law on May 21st, 1887 to Sarah Bancroft Reed and Frederick Henry Law in Lynn, Massachusetts. She was inspired to take up flying by her brother, parachutist and pioneer movie stuntman, Ruth Law, with whom she challenged herself to physically keep up during their childhood. I hope you noticed today would have been Ruth Law's birthday. Robin Law was an early movie stuntman and parachutist. Law parachuted or base jumped off the top of the candle in the Statue of Liberty. Law starred in or participated in several silent movies, including a 1914 film built around his exploits, Daredevil Robin Law. Harriet Quimby's fall. Soon after, she was at the Boston Dairy and watched Harriet Quimby fall to her death. She was shaken, but it did not stop her. Ruth had tasted a sense of fulfillment in flying and would not return to the traditional role found by society. Harriet Quimby was an American pioneering aviator, journalist, and film screenwriter. In 1911, she became the first woman in the United States to receive a pilot's license, and in 1912, the first woman to fly across the English Channel. Although Quimby died at the age of 37 in a flying accident, she strongly influenced the role of women in aviation.
First point. At age 21, Ruth Law bought her first airplane from Hornell Wright, who refused to train her because she did not believe women did not have the mechanical aptitude for flight. She wanted the right thing to speak to have good success. Ruth was refused lessons by Orville Wright because, according to Law, he believed that women were mechanically fine. But this only made her more determined. Later saying the surest way to make me do a thing was to have the end of it. She was an adept mechanic.
Flying lessons. Since Orville Wright refused to train Ruth, she enrolled in the British Flying School. Ruth took her first plane ride on July 1st, 1912. On August 1st, 1912, Ruth soloed and received her license on November 12th, 1912. A local newspaper at the time wrote that Ruth Law had taken her instructor, Arch Freeman, on a short flight with her in an aeroplane staying up to 7,800 feet into the air above Syracuse, Massachusetts.
Commercial pilot. Ruth immediately went to work as a commercial pilot, flying passengers to and from the Sea Breeze Hotel in Florida. The beach was Daytona Beach area's first airstrip, but less appreciated was that it was also the area's first airstrip. Ruth Law became the first woman in Florida to pilot an airplane. She took off from the beach on January 12, 1913. She too would take return visitors a lot from the near Paris Hotel from 1913 to 1916. In the picture, Miss Robert Roulette is getting a ride in I'll Ride the Airplane in Daytona Beach, Florida, with Miss Ruth Law. It is rather interesting that Miss Roulette is from Binghamton.
Curtis Quimby. On November 6, 1913, Ruth became the first woman to fly at night with a 20-minute moonlight flight over the sea to Island, New York. She continued throughout 1914 and 1915. Mrs. Law made exhortation flights at resorts and meets in the East. Curtis Quinn. After training on a Wright Brothers aircraft and becoming a farm exhibition flyer, Ruth learned superior and more maneuverable machine. This met Curtis, but she didn't want to retrain. Each company had its own control system. She was soon able to buy a Curtis Pusher Loop model with the propeller was in the back. She hired Curtis men to retrofit it with right controls and two big levers. Curtis used a wheel and shoulder yoke. She then began flying aerobatics at Daytona Beach, Florida. She preferred not to have the shield on the front so that she could have more.
Ruth's greatest flight. On November 19th, 1916, Law made the greatest flight of her career and set 3 new records.
Chicago to New York. Ruth Law announced her plans to try to fly from Chicago to New York. She was not taken seriously. Her attempt was sanctioned by the Air Club of America, the governing body of American aviation, but many had their doubts as to whether a woman could make such a flight. Endurance, the cold, cramping in a small space were concerns. No American woman had ever made such a journey, and no one believed she had a plane capable of making such a distance. She had never flown a greater distance across country than 25 miles.
New plane, please. Law tried to buy a larger plane with greater fuel capacity for her proposed flight, but Mr. Curtis would not sell it to her. Curtis was quite busy making planes for the war effort. Curtis couldn't get one ready for her on time, and he also thought that the larger plane that she wanted was too much for a girl to handle. Did Mr. Curtis doubt that assessment of Ruth Law in a bigger plane? He later told a Chicago Tribune reporter that Miss Law's feat is the most wonderful in all aviation. He wouldn't have thought that the plane she used would make more than 100 miles in sustained flight. Boston Post.
The plane she will use. The plane that Ruth intended to use was a small obsolete machine with an 1848 motor that many felt was enough to protect. It was a Curtiss biplane with an 8-cylinder, 100 horsepower motor engine. Referred to as pushers with a 12-foot wood propeller blade in the New York plane. The Model D was a biplane with a wheel tricycle on the gears. Construction was primarily of spruce, ash, and parts of the engine blades and undercarriage beams with no blinding stretched over it. The actuator beams were made of bamboo. Sitting in front of the motor, the pilot had no protection from the elements. The rotors and controls were manipulated by 2 levers down to the side of the seat, which put a strain on the pilot's arm and one. Law had to work the throttle with one for feet and brake with the other one for hand. Law had a compass bolted to the helmet between her feet. A large map and a wooden box was strapped to her left leg. On her right glove was sewed a type sheet of similar instructions for her route. Maps. Since the plane's controls required constant use of her hands, Law had to learn how to draw massive and consultant compass reading maps. She saw this by summarizing the compass directions of her flight and marking the region on a long cuff of her leather gauntlet. She mapped out her course and finished roller charts mounted on the rollers. She couldn't take her hands off the left vertical control, or she could for a short time. She could take the right hand off and hold the control with her legs to stroll the chart. Ruth went over the route with Lieutenant J. A. McAllister, a hydrographic survey office of Chicago, and then traced the route herself on a chart. Nothing on the chart, the compass directions of her flight, which directions she summarized on the cuff of the gauntlet. Hornell is 48 miles south and 6 degrees from north. Gas. Law added an extra gas tank to the small plane. The original fuel capacity was only 16 gallons. The additional tank brought the fuel capacity to 53 gallons of gasoline. Ruth Law calculated the gas and it would be resulting in Hornell. Ruth also removed all surplus weight from the plane, including wheels. Law steered her open cockpit Curtiss Model D headless biplane plane to the bare minimum. She removed all equipment to trim weight and decided to only fly daily. Lashes in the winter when days are short and no food. Law didn't even have any food or water for an almost 9-hour flight.
Clothing. In 1916, a proper woman wore skirts, but to make this flight, Ruth needed to change her clothing. She She wore layers of heavy clothing that made it hard to move, but did provide the protection she needed. She had silk suits and tamoys, 2 woolen suits and 2 leather suits, a leather and wool helmet, and with a wool face mask and goggles. Her skirt was tucked behind her seat. She also had leather boots over her shoes. Her only baggage was a set of letters for people in New York. According to the Binghamton Press, November 20th, 1916, one of the letters was from Douglas Arthur T. to David Velasco, whose portrait Mr. T is now painting. A second was from James G. Brownlow to the secretary of the New York City Rotary Club. The third was from Charles Thomas Cunningham, a former New York newspaper editor, to Judge John Jerome Rooney, the Court of Quits. Judge Rooney is a former Binghamtonian. Mr. T wrote to Mr. Velasco as follows. My dear Mr. Velasco, ever since your delightful courtesy to me in the tendering of the box for the Little Lady in Blue to myself and party in Cleveland, Ohio, I desire to make some more fitting acknowledgement than that of my previous note accepted, with a bit of originality thrown in for good measure. I now take the opportunity graciously extended by Miss Ruth Law to bear my letter of gratitude to you in her bird flight from Chicago to New York. I desire to convey my most sincere compliment to the Little Lady in Blue and to you, my dear Mr. Velasco, for your much appreciated kindness. Very sincerely yours, Douglas Arthur T.
The condition provided Ruth started sleeping and sat on the roof of the Morris Hotel in Chicago to face the elements. She wanted both the bitter cold and also the altitude. If the average floor is 14 feet and the tallest floor of the hotel at this time was 21 floors, that would make it 294 feet high, she slept.
This reflection is not like shade plant. It was delayed because of 50-mile-an-hour wind stretched from the northeast. The temperature was so cold she could not get the engine to start. With skill and determination, Law left the windy city and headed out to leaving many crying together. On November 19, 1916, she took off from north of Chicago's Rampart. She flew right into gale and her machine carried with speeds of 82 miles per hour, forcing north like 80 slow over Chicago. The plane had been at fuel she flew at 10,000 feet in strong winds to slow the process.
Gas calculations. Ruth had calculated that 53 gallons of gas she would need to get her to Hornell, New York. She had thought she would have winds that would save her some gas. 10 miles outside of Hornell, she realized her fuel was depleted. 2 miles outside of Hornell, she was completely empty. According to New York Times, Miss Law admitted that although her flight had gone as she planned it, she had hopes way down in her heart when she left Chicago that she would be able to make a non-stop flight to New York on 53 gallons of gasoline.
Winds is coming. It was noon before anyone in Hornell knew that wind was coming, and the rate of the after the gas. There were only a few hundred people at their barracks at 2 p.m. The noise of the plane was people and thousands of people away. The plane that Ruth Law was in was a Curtiss pusher. Pusher is a term used to describe a drivetrain of air or watercrafts with a propulsion device after the engine. They were noisy so people could have heard her way before they could see her in the air. She landed. Since Ruth was out of gas, she had to glide onto the stair down to Hornell, with Hornell High School rooms. There were so many people, Ruth was afraid of hitting people as she landed. Celebration day, but the landing was about 3 tenths moments before. Not from the cold, as she drifted into Hornell out of gasoline. New York Times quoted her saying she had calculated that the 53 gallons of gasoline would carry her from Chicago to Hornell, with the wind she hoped to open it there. 2 miles outside of Hornell, her gasoline gave out. She glided into Hornell and onto the racetrack, where the racetrack was so crowded with well-wishers, and that she felt she was so close to striking people as she landed.
Cold, but my
first tortoise. Her assistants quickly unstrapped and helped her out of the seat. She was stiff and out from the cold. She had a severe headache, probably from the wind. A Boston Post reported that Law fell rather than stepped out of her seat at the first stop. A mask of ice glazed her face. Her eyes were fixed like one of those marionettes. Her arms remained at right angles as though she had not let go of the wheel. It was several minutes before the daring girl could walk correct or talk correctly.
Food and warm. Ruth was whisked away to get food and get warm after she had put her skirt over her pants. There is no record in Hornell where Ruth Law was whisked away to. There are several diners near the fairground. Many people like Babe Ruth and Cal Rogers airplane pilot when in Hornell had to take it to the Sherwood Inn.
Remarkable engine. Isn't this a remarkable engine with static enthusiasm to the Curtis Memory Daniel Sport? The men were Whackman, James Lamont, Ed Richards, Albert Walker, and Billy Spencer. The men went over the Curtis plane to check everything. Victor Carlson, the man she beat, said, I know what it means to face the fighting wind hour after hour in such a flight. I know that it takes great endurance, strength, and perhaps the most wonderful thing about Miss Law's record was that she had the physical ability to make it. I knew she'd stick to it as long as she was able, but I never dreamed that such a slight little woman would stand straight and climb half the distance she made. Another extraordinary thing was that the old model aeroplane she flew stood up like it did with the entire distance. Flying such a machine was very weird. Never for a moment could she rest and relax. Every minute she was in the air, she had to have her hands on the controls. This alone, she was like an inferior equipment run by an experienced aviator on a limited time to make a brilliant shot. Ruth had gone about 103 miles an hour and some 590 miles without stopping. Ruth Law's trip from Chicago to Hornell was made at an altitude average of 5,000 feet. The trip from Binghamton, New York City was made at an altitude of about 1,000 feet and several times through to 2,000 feet, the sun was higher.
Ruth was told that she had beat Victor Carl's storm distance in a single flight by 200 miles. She was the first woman to pilot a machine on a flight cross-country, or remain so many hours in the air. No other person, man or woman, had flown farther in the U.S. When she heard that, she became very excited and decided to continue in New York City. The records that she's broken include first woman to fly, other records that she's broken include first woman to fly at night, first woman to loop-de-loop, first woman to set American record for distance flight, non-stop record, and world record for continuous world record for continuous flight for a woman pilot. She had the honor of carrying the first official air medal to the Philippine Islands in 1919. In 1917, she was the first woman who authorized to wear an Army aviation uniform. In Ruth Law's flying circus, she set an altitude and distance records.
She was able to get enough elevation to get over with the trees striking the bottom of her. No provisions had been made for Ruth to land in New York City in November, so she landed in Binghamton, New York. Victor Castro was quoted saying in the New York Times, "Of course, Miss Law took some chances. When she left Hornell, she risked her life by scanning the tops of the trees on the hill over which she flew. Few pilots would have taken such a chance, which meant death or serious injury for the shooter. However, taking chances was second nature to Law. Ruth landed in Binghamton at 4:20 p.m. She tied her plane to a tree and got a policeman to watch it all night. She continued to New York City at 7:23 a.m. the following morning. In 1916, planes were not an everyday occurrence in the sky. So can you believe what the people thought where she landed and the policemen that watched the plane all night thought? Having to New York City. After Ruth left Binghamton, she encountered heavy fog. She was unable to see her compass. She couldn't see the landmarks to make sure she was going in the correct direction. So she followed rivers all the way to New York City. She again ran out of gas and had to glide into Governor Island at 9:37 a.m. Her total flight time for the 884 miles from Chicago to New York was 8 hours and 55 minutes. According to the New York Times, Ruth was quoted as saying, "When I left Binghamton, the wind was blowing briskly, but it didn't do me any good. I soon found myself in a fog so thick that I couldn't make out where I was going. I had mapped out my course to the directions marked, but I had no instrument to indicate the drift of the wind. The wind was imposing, and I couldn't see any landmarks. And so I came down until I was almost top of the woods." Law was greeted by many dignitaries and was proud. Her flight was still as the greatest flight ever made in America. Even President Woodrow Wilson congratulated Law and told her she was a great little father. The airport of America made the flight official and named Ruth Law the record holder for American nonstop cross country trip. She was so benumbed with cold she didn't move for a moment or two after her airplane stopped. Uncle Sam's band was playing and everyone was waiting to greet her. When the U.S. joined World War I in 1917, Law wrote newspaper articles and even petitioned President Woodrow Wilson to allow women to fly in the military. While these requests were denied, she was given special permissions to wear an aviation uniform. Law tried to volunteer for the military, but was turned down. "We don't want women in the Army," Secretary Margaret McGill Baker said. Law persisted, pushing for some official law for women to work.
World War I. Ruth Law enlisted in the Army June 30th, 1917, after the United States entered World War I. Her intention was to serve as a pilot, but she was not permitted to fly, but was assigned to the U.S. Army Accessions Command to assist with recruiting and instruction. Law trained in the 38th Infantry Division at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, where she served in Europe and helped the non-commissioned officer rank assertion. Law saw no reason why she shouldn't serve her country like male pilots fighting battles in the sky. As she saw it, women have qualities which make them good aviators too. They're courageous, self-possessed, fear-efficient, quick to decide in an emergency, and usually they make wise decisions.
However, Law needed help in supporting the world effort on the home front. She flew in exhibitions to raise money for the Red Cross and Mississippi Drives. With these exhibitions, she threw flyers from her airplane, asking people to buy 4 bombs. She also flew in exhibitions assigned to help increase the Muslims. She wore the uniform from serving her country by flying before others. She also gave a tuition flight to help raise money for the Red Cross and Liberty War Drives. For Liberty War promotional flights, Law dropped bombshell mini flights like the one on the screen. It looked like a silk mom on one side and raised by a Liberty Bond of the next bond dropped on the mutual German bond. I bought my Liberty Bond when we buy yours today. Good fall. On the other side is color of law and uniform with boots around the edge that say, I have volunteered to put my bit of women countries, so you will pay for your money. Following the war. Following the war, Law set several aviation records in stunt flying and operated Ruth Law's flight circus. After World War I, she formed Ruth Law's flying circus, a three-plane troupe that made spectators at state and county fairs. The troupe were raced against cars, flying through fireworks, and setting altitude and distance records. At one point in 1917, she earned $9,000 a week for exhibition place. Women's rights. From her scrapbook in the Smithsonian Archives, you can see that Ruth was a supporter of women's rights. She encouraged women to do what they wanted to do. The majority of upper and most middle-class women did not undertake paid work except for respectable activities like being a governess or a music teacher or even a nurse. Most women in this class were expected just to get married and look after their children at home. Modesty was emphasized with day dresses covering the body from the neck to the floor and long sleeves covering the arms. Skirts were bell-shaped and lace was a popular decoration.
Retired. March 1922, Ruth was reading the paper at breakfast and saw that she had retired from flying. Her husband was worried about her, and she had wanted to raise a family, so he put the announcement in the paper. She was rather surprised. Ruth Law was quoted to say in the Chicago paper on March 1922, "It's my husband's turn now. I've been on the limelight long enough. I'm going to let him run things hereafter, and me too." The speaker was Ruth Law Oliver, daring woman aviatrix, who for 10 years has been courting death and defying it as a stunt flyer both in America and Europe. She has quit aviation, retired forever. Why? Because I'm a normal woman and want to have a home, a baby, and everything else that goes with married life, she says. Why, I've been married for almost 10 years to Charlie Oliver, the man who has managed my exhibitions, and scarcely anyone knew who he was. And the poor boy was so worried about me all that time that every time I went out, he lost a pound. He was a matter of choosing between love and profession. Of course, I'm crazy about flying, but one's husband is more important.
Ruth Law. It was a sincere love of flying that made Law so efficiently to promote aviation and to inspire others to fly. She once stated, "There is an indescribable feeling between experiences in flying. It comes with no other form of support than other. It takes courage and daring, and one must be self-possessed, for there are moments where one's wits are tested and cold. Yet there is exhilaration that compensates for all one's efforts." Ruth Law's many achievements were just a small part of Law's career. She was the first to fly to the Philippines Islands with the official airmail. She was the first woman to be willing to leave from the United States after World War I. She was prohibited from serving as a military pilot, but she raised money for the Red Cross through exhibitions and air shows, and she was the first woman authorized to wear non-commissioned officers' military uniform.
Ruth Law. Law's daring, courage, and skill should be remembered because she was a remarkable pioneer who challenged stereotypes, established new aviation records, and encouraged others to share her passion for flying and her vision for the future of aviation. This spectacular pioneer aviator lived to see men walking on the moon. Ruth Law died at the age of 83. From the New York Times, Major Hartman of the Signal Corps, in charge of the Army's aviation, was quoted to say, "From what Miss Law has done, I should say that our Army aviators could, with the equipment they have, met any situation demanded of them in a war against any nation we might fight, which did not already have an air force. Another element of the flight which I consider important would be its effect on the popular mind. In the Army, we do not want any special sort of men to become aviators. We want all sorts of men to become Miss Law has shown that anyone who thinks he would like to fly need not hesitate because he believes himself unfit. All he needs is to have the nerve to try.